The rain hammered against the windows of Real Madrid's training facility as President Florentino Perez stared at the injury report spread across his mahogany desk. The year was 2029, and what should have been a celebration, their first Champions League final in years, had turned into a nightmare. 3 key players sidelined, 2 more carrying knocks that would limit their effectiveness. His weathered fingers traced the names on the medical report. Mbappé torn hamstring, Bellingham ankle fracture, Haaland shoulder dislocation. The golden generation that was supposed to carry Real Madrid into the future lay broken in the medical bay, their dreams hanging by the thinnest of threads. There has to be another way, Perez muttered to himself, his eyes drifting to the framed photographs lining his office walls. Images of glory days past stared back at him: Ronaldo lifting the Champions League trophy, Benzema's elegant celebration after scoring the winner against Chelsea, the duo embracing after countless victories. Across the city, in a modest apartment overlooking the Retiro Park, Karim Benzema was going through his secret ritual. At 41, the world believed he had hung up his boots 2 years ago, content to spend his days coaching youth teams and appearing at charity events. But 3 times a week, under the cover of darkness, he would slip away to a private training ground on the outskirts of Madrid. His first touch was still silk. His vision remained laser sharp. The hunger, that insatiable desire to compete at the highest level, burned as fiercely as ever in his chest. As he struck ball after ball into the top corner, each shot finding its mark with mechanical precision, Benzema allowed himself to dream of one more dance on the grand stage. The call came at 11:47 p.m. Perez's voice was strained, desperate. "Karim, I know this is crazy, but I'm listening," Benzema interrupted, his heart already racing. "The final is in 3 days. We're falling apart. The kids can't handle the pressure. I need experience. I need leadership. I need—" Perez paused, the weight of what he was about to ask settling on his shoulders. "I need you to come home." Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia, Cristiano Ronaldo was in his private gym, defying father time with the same obsessive dedication that had defined his entire career. At 44, his body was a testament to decades of meticulous self-care. Every muscle fiber had been sculpted and maintained with scientific precision. His vertical leap was still impressive, his speed still dangerous in short bursts. The El Nasser chapter had been fulfilling, but as he watched European football from afar, a familiar ache gnawed at his soul. The Champions League's tournament, his stage was reaching its crescendo without him. He had conquered every mountain in football, broken every record worth breaking, but the thought of Real Madrid in another final without him felt like watching someone else raise his children. His phone buzzed with a message from an old friend: "Watch the final. We might need a miracle." It was unsigned, but Ronaldo knew. Benzema had been called back. "Book me a flight to Madrid," he told his assistant without looking up from his workout. Tomorrow, the Santiago Bernabeu was electric on the night of the final. 90,000 souls packed into the cathedral of football, their voices creating a wall of sound that seemed to lift the very roof of the stadium. Real Madrid faced Liverpool, a young, hungry team led by devastating wingers and a midfield that pressed with the intensity of hungry wolves. In the tunnel, Benzema adjusted his number 9 jersey for the first time in 2 years. His hands trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from the sheer magnitude of the moment. Around him, his young teammates looked shell-shocked by the occasion. Their eyes were wide, their movements stilted by the weight of expectation. "Breathe," Benzema whispered to 22-year-old midfielder Pablo Martin, whose Champions League debut had arrived at the worst possible time. "This is just football. Remember why you fell in love with it." But as the teams walked onto the pitch, the roar of the crowd hitting them like a physical force, Benzema could see that his words weren't enough. The young players were drowning in the moment. Liverpool came out like lions unleashed from their cage. Their high press suffocated Real Madrid's usual rhythm, forcing errors and creating chaos in the Spanish side's defensive third. Within 15 minutes, they had taken the lead through a deflected shot that wrong-footed the goalkeeper. The second goal arrived just before halftime, a stunning counter-attack that exposed Real Madrid's inexperienced backline. As the players trudged toward the tunnel, shoulders slumped in defeat, the magnitude of the disaster became clear. This wasn't just about losing a final, it was about a changing of the guard, the end of an era. In the VIP section, Cristiano Ronaldo sat motionless, his jaw clenched as he watched his former teammates struggle. He had arrived in Madrid that morning, officially as a guest of the club, but privately nursing hopes that had seemed foolish in the cold light of day. Carlo Ancelotti's halftime team talk was desperate, almost pleading. The Italian had seen it all in his decades in football, but this felt different, more personal. These weren't just players. They were inheritors of a legacy that was crumbling in real time. We're not just playing for ourselves, Ancelotti said, his voice carrying the weight of history. We're playing for everyone who ever wore this shirt, everyone who ever believed in the magic of this club. Benzema stood up, his presence immediately commanding attention. "Look at me," he said quietly, but his voice carried to every corner of the dressing room. "I know you're scared. I know the pressure feels like it's crushing you. But you know what? That pressure is a privilege. Not everyone gets to feel it." His eyes swept across the young faces staring back at him. "In this shirt, we don't surrender. Ever. The game isn't over until the referee says it is." As the second half began, a ripple of excitement spread through the Bernabeu. The giant screens were showing Cristiano Ronaldo making his way down from the VIP section, security guards flanking him as he headed toward the tunnel area. Social media exploded with speculation, but most dismissed it as a gesture of support. Only a select few knew the truth. FIFA had granted Real Madrid an extraordinary exemption, allowing them to register an emergency player due to the unprecedented injury crisis. The paperwork had been rushed through in record time, a testament to the influence still wielded by Florentino Perez. The 60th minute arrived with Real Madrid still trailing to -0, their young players increasingly desperate in their attempts to create something from nothing. Then disaster struck again. Left back Miguel Torres went down clutching his ankle after a crunching tackle, his anguished screams echoing around the stadium. As Torres was stretchered off, a murmur began in the crowd that quickly grew to a roar. Cristiano Ronaldo was emerging from the tunnel, wearing Real Madrid's iconic white shirt for the first time in years. The number 7 on his back seemed to glow under the floodlights. The stadium erupted. Grown men wept openly in the stands. Even Liverpool's players paused to watch as the Portuguese legend jogged toward the sideline, his familiar pre-game routine unchanged by the years. The stretches, the little jumps, the focused expression that had become synonymous with clutch moments. "This is impossible," whispered the television commentator, his voice barely audible above the cacophony. "This doesn't happen in real football. This is the stuff of dreams." As Ronaldo stripped off his warm-up jacket, revealing the physique that had been his calling card for 2 decades, Benzema caught his eye from across the pitch. The look they shared transcended words. It was understanding, recognition, a promise that they would write one final chapter together. The moment Ronaldo stepped onto the pitch, Real Madrid's energy shifted. The young players who had been wilting under pressure suddenly stood taller, their movements more confident. It was as if someone had plugged them back into the mains. Liverpool, sensing the change in atmosphere, tried to kill the game with possession, keeping the ball away from Madrid's rejuvenated attack. But experience has a way of creating opportunities where none existed before. In the 68th minute, Ronaldo dropped deep to collect the ball, just as he had done thousands of times before in the white shirt. His first touch was perfect, his awareness instant. He spotted Benzema making a run that only years of partnership could have made predictable. The pass was weighted perfectly, splitting Liverpool's defense like a hot knife through butter. Benzema's control was exquisite, his finish clinical. 2-1. The Bernabeu exploded in a delirium of noise and emotion. What followed was football at its most pure, its most beautiful. Ronaldo and Benzema, their bodies older but their minds sharper than ever, began to dictate the rhythm of the game. They moved with the synchronicity of dancers who had performed together for years, each knowing instinctively where the other would be. The Liverpool players, for all their youth and athleticism, found themselves chasing shadows. This wasn't just about skill, it was about intelligence, about reading the game 3 moves ahead, about knowing when to accelerate and when to wait. In the 75th minute, Ronaldo won a free kick 25 yards from goal. As he placed the ball with ceremonial precision, the stadium fell silent. Everyone knew what was coming, yet the anticipation was electric. But instead of shooting, Ronaldo stepped back. Benzema approached the ball, his run-up shorter than usual, more economical. The shot was perfect, a curling effort that bent around the wall and nestled in the top corner. 2-2. The final 15 minutes became a siege. Liverpool, rattled by the turn of events, began to make the kind of mistakes that experience punishes ruthlessly. Their pressing became frantic rather than organized, their passing sloppy under the pressure of 90,000 voices demanding a winner. Ronaldo and Benzema were everywhere, dropping deep to help with build-up play, pressing high to win the ball back, orchestrating attacks with the calm authority of master conductors. The young Madrid players fed off their energy, their confidence growing with every successful pass, every well-timed tackle. As the clock ticked toward full time, it seemed inevitable that the moment would come. In football, as in life, some stories demand their perfect ending. It arrived in the 89th minute. A Liverpool corner was cleared as far as the halfway line, where Ronaldo collected the ball with his back to goal. The counter-attack unfolded in slow motion. Ronaldo's turn, his burst of acceleration that defied his age, the perfectly weighted through ball that sent Benzema clear on goal. But Benzema didn't shoot. With the goal at his mercy, with 90,000 people expecting him to seal his comeback in the most emphatic way possible, he looked up and saw Ronaldo charging into the penalty area. The cutback was inch perfect. Ronaldo's shot was blocked, but the rebound fell kindly. This time, Benzema was there to apply the finish, his right foot finding the net with the inevitability of fate itself. 3-2. The explosion of joy that followed seemed to shake the very foundations of the stadium. Players collapsed in tears, fans embraced strangers, and somewhere in the director's box, Florentino Perez allowed himself a smile that spoke of vindication, of faith rewarded. But in the center of it all, two old warriors simply embraced. No words were needed. They had climbed their final mountain together, written their names in the stars one last time. As the final whistle blew and the celebrations began in earnest, Ronaldo and Benzema walked slowly toward the tunnel, their job done. The young players who had started the game as nervous boys were now holding the Champions League trophy aloft, their transformation complete. "That was perfect," Benzema said quietly, his voice barely audible above the celebrations. Ronaldo nodded, his eyes already distant. The perfect ending. They both knew that this was truly the end not just of the game, but of their time on football's biggest stage. Tomorrow, they would return to their respective lives, content in the knowledge that they had answered one final call to glory. In the press conference that followed, journalists struggled to find words for what they had witnessed. "How do you explain tonight?" one asked. Benzema smiled, his exhaustion evident but his satisfaction complete. "Sometimes, football writes its own stories. Tonight, it chose to write about two old friends who refused to say goodbye. The story would be told and retold for generations. Children who weren't even born would grow up hearing about the night when legends returned from the dead to save Real Madrid's soul. It would become myth, then legend, then eternal truth." But for Ronaldo and Benzema, the real victory wasn't the trophy or the headlines or the adulation of millions. It was the knowledge that when their club needed them most, when the young generation was struggling to carry the weight of history, they had been there. They had proven that some bonds transcend time, that some partnerships exist beyond the physical realm of football. They had shown that experience, wisdom, and the will to succeed can overcome any obstacle. As they changed out of their Real Madrid shirts for the final time, both men carried with them the satisfaction of a story perfectly told, a career arc completed in the most beautiful way imaginable. The last dance was over. The music had stopped, but the memory would live forever. Years later, when fans gathered to debate the greatest Champions League final ever played, this night would always be mentioned, not just for the comeback, not just for the drama, but for what it represented: the passing of the torch from one generation to the next, orchestrated by the very legends who had defined the previous era. Ronaldo would return to Saudi Arabia, his legacy secure beyond any doubt. Benzema would finally retire, content that his final act had been his most meaningful. And Real Madrid would continue, carried forward by the young players who had learned that night what it truly meant to wear the white shirt. The beautiful game had provided the perfect ending to an extraordinary chapter. Sometimes, in football as in life, the impossible becomes inevitable. Sometimes, legends really do come home.